The night smelled like gasoline and rain. Ethan Carter's head slammed against the steering wheel, the airbag deflating in a hiss of smoke. He tasted blood, metallic, bitter. The world spun in flashes of red and orange as flames licked the hood of his car. His right leg was pinned, crushed beneath the dashboard. He screamed, but the storm swallowed the sound. His phone lay shattered beside him, screen glowing faintly. No signal. He coughed again, gasping for air. "Somebody help!" Through the rain-soaked blur, a silhouette appeared. Tall, calm, moving with purpose. A man in a paramedic jacket. Ethan's blurred eyes widened as the rescuer smashed the window with a crowbar and reached inside. "Stay still," the voice said, deep, steady. Ethan's chest heaved. I can't move. Please, I can't." "I've got you," the man said. The seatbelt snapped. In one motion, the rescuer dragged Ethan from the wreckage, flames bursting behind them. Ethan's body hit the cold asphalt. He wheezed, the world fading in and out of consciousness. The paramedic leaned close, checking his pulse. The rain washed soot and blood from Ethan's face. Then, something strange. The man froze for half a second, studying Ethan's features under the flashing emergency lights. His expression changed. Not anger, not surprise. Something more profound. Ethan blinked, dazed. Do I know you?" The man didn't answer. He only gave a small, tight smile, one that carried years of silence and buried hurt. "Yeah," he said quietly, almost to himself. "You knew me once." Ethan's breathing slowed. His vision tunneled, blackness creeping in. The last thing he heard before passing out was that same voice, now calling on the radio for backup, calm and composed. The voice of a professional saving another life. But beneath that calm was history. When Ethan woke again, he wouldn't remember much, only that a man had saved him, a man whose face felt hauntingly familiar, a man he once called names years ago when life was simpler and crueler. Years before the fire and the rain, Ethan Carter had been the kind of teenager everyone admired, or feared. Captain of the basketball team, son of a wealthy contractor. The kind of boy who wore confidence like cologne, heavy and suffocating. He smiled easily, but it was the kind of smile that warned people not to challenge him. Teachers forgave his lateness. Girls laughed at jokes that weren't funny, and when he spoke, people listened, even when his words cut. Across the same hallway walked Marcus Green, quiet, reserved, carrying a backpack that had seen better days. He didn't have the latest sneakers or a car waiting for him after school. He had something rarer, discipline. His mother worked double shifts at the nursing home. His father had been gone since he was 9 years old. Marcus learned early that no one was coming to save him. So he studied. He stayed after class. And when the janitor's keys jingled through the empty hallways, Marcus was still there, head bent over anatomy books, whispering to himself about the body's fragile design. The veins, the pulse, the miracle of breath. His dream was simple: become a paramedic. To him, saving a life was more than a job. It was a way to defy everything the world had told him about what he couldn't be. But to Ethan, Marcus was just an easy target. At first, it started small. Jokes about his clothes, about the ghetto bus he rode. Then it turned crueler. In the cafeteria one afternoon, Ethan mimicked Marcus's accent in front of half the senior class. The laughter was sharp, echoing off the tiled walls. Marcus stood frozen, holding his tray, his eyes steady but burning. He didn't fight back, didn't shout. He just stared. A long, silent look that Ethan would remember years later when his own reflection started to feel like an accusation. To the school, it was another forgettable moment. To Marcus, it was the day he promised himself that cruelty would never define him. Outside of school, their worlds couldn't have been more different. Ethan's weekends meant pool parties, expensive cars, and loud music that drowned thought. Marcus meant night shifts at the grocery store, saving every dollar for community college. If you'd asked Ethan back then, he would have said Marcus didn't matter, just a background character in his story. But fate, as it often does, was already writing its quiet revenge. Because while Ethan was learning how to impress people, Marcus was learning how to save them. And one day, years later, their paths would cross again, not as classmates, but as one man dying and another holding the power to save him. It started with a smirk. That's all it took for the line between casual teasing and cruelty to disappear. Ethan leaned against his locker, surrounded by his usual circle, the basketball team, the popular crowd, kids who laughed on command. Marcus walked by, clutching a science project made from cardboard and tape. He'd spent all weekend on it. Ethan noticed the frayed edges and grinned. "Hey, Green!" he called out, voice dripping with mock kindness. "Did you build that out of trash, or is that just your budget version of innovation?" The group burst into laughter. Marcus stopped, but didn't look up. He adjusted his backpack strap and kept walking. That quietness, that refusal to react, irritated Ethan. He needed an audience, and Marcus's silence felt like a form of defiance. So, Ethan pushed harder. Day after day, small jabs gave way to open ridicule. When Marcus wore the same pair of shoes for months, Ethan made a game out of pointing them out. When Marcus gave a presentation in biology, Ethan whispered mockingly to his friends, "Guess the genius is gonna cure poverty now." Every laugh echoed like a slap. One afternoon, it went too far. The school was buzzing. It was the last day before winter break. The cafeteria smelled of pizza and sweat. Ethan was in rare form, energized by the attention. Marcus sat alone, eating quietly. Ethan grabbed his friend's phone, opened the camera, and pointed it toward Marcus. "Yo, check this out," he said. "National Geographic in the wild. The broke edition." The crowd laughed. Someone recorded it. Marcus froze. He didn't move, didn't flinch. He just stood up slowly, his tray still in hand. For a moment, their eyes met. And for the first time, Ethan saw something in Marcus's gaze he couldn't name. It wasn't anger. It wasn't fear. It was a pity. Marcus walked out without saying a word. The laughter died a little after that. But by evening, the video was online, shared, liked, and captioned. "Local hero gets roasted." It spread through the school like wildfire. Marcus skipped the next day. Ethan didn't care. Not really. He laughed it off. "It's just a joke," he told himself. Everyone's too sensitive these days. But somewhere deep down, a whisper started. Quiet. Persistent. He ignored it. Marcus, meanwhile, withdrew further. The following semester, he barely spoke in class. His teachers noticed the change. The boy who used to sit in the front now lingered in the back. But no one asked why. At home, his mother also noticed the silence. "You okay, baby?" she'd ask. Marcus would smile faintly. "I'm fine, Ma, just tired." But inside, he wasn't tired. He was hurt. Not because of the jokes, but because the world around him laughed instead of standing up. Still, he didn't let it break him. He focused harder on his studies, joined a volunteer ambulance unit in his senior year, and began shadowing local EMTs. Every time he helped someone breathe again, the laughter in that cafeteria echoed a little quieter in his memory. As for Ethan, graduation came and went. He didn't think about Marcus again. He moved to the city, took a sales job, and learned how to charm clients the same way he once charmed classmates, with half-truths and complete confidence. But sometimes, when the room got too quiet, or when guilt caught him between drinks, he'd remember that cafeteria, the look in Marcus's eyes. And for a second, that old whisper returned. You laughed at someone who was just trying to make it. He would drown it out with another drink. Because facing it meant facing himself. And Ethan Carter wasn't ready for that. Not yet. The years rolled on like restless tides, carrying Ethan and Marcus to entirely different shores. Ethan Carter's 20s looked golden from the outside. He had a job in insurance sales, a downtown apartment, and a social circle that revolved around rooftop bars and empty compliments. But beneath that polished surface, his life was slowly unraveling. The charm that once made people laugh now came off as arrogance. Clients stopped calling. Deadlines blurred. The pressure to sell became suffocating. So he started drinking, to take the edge off. At first, it was harmless. A glass at dinner, then two, then bottles. Before long, mornings became a fog, and nights turned into a blur of neon lights and regret. His friends stopped inviting him out. His girlfriend left after one too many broken promises. And the mirror, once his biggest fan, became his worst enemy. The confident boy who mocked others to feel taller was now shrinking beneath his own failures. His father's voice haunted him. "Winners don't make excuses, son." But Ethan had run out of excuses, and out of victories. Bills piled up. He was fired twice in a year. When his car broke down, he pawned his watch, the same one he'd flaunted in high school as a symbol of status. There were nights he'd sit on the apartment balcony, staring at the city lights below, wondering when exactly everything had gone wrong. The answer was simple. It had started the moment he believed he was better than someone else. On the other side of town, Marcus Green was learning what it meant to build something from nothing. He'd finished community college, earned his EMT certification, and joined the city's ambulance service. It wasn't glamorous, the pay was low, the hours brutal, but to Marcus, every life saved was a victory against the world's cruelty. He'd seen things that would break most people. Accidents, overdoses, despair, yet he never grew numb. Every heartbeat mattered. Every call was sacred. When kids in his neighborhood saw him in uniform, they waved. "Hey, Mr. Marcus!" they'd shout. He'd smile, lift a hand, and tell them, "Don't be like the people who laugh at others. Be the one who helps." At night, he'd drive home through the same streets he once walked to school on, remembering that cafeteria laughter. He didn't hate Ethan, not anymore. He'd long realized that hatred was just another chain, and he refused to wear it. But sometimes he still wondered where Ethan was. What had become of that boy with everything? Fate has a strange sense of timing. While Marcus was pulling a young overdose victim out of a back alley one night, Ethan sat in his car a few blocks away, head heavy against the steering wheel, an unopened bottle on the seat beside him. Different nights, same city, two lives orbiting the same pain without knowing it. By 30, Marcus had earned the respect of his peers. By 30, Ethan was on the edge of losing everything. Their trajectories couldn't have been more opposite. One defined by service, the other by self-destruction. But deep inside Ethan, something small had begun to shift. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe it was that one dream that kept replaying. Marcus's face in the cafeteria, staring back at him, silent and strong. He'd wake up sweating, heart pounding, that same whisper in his mind. You laughed at someone who was only trying to do good. The day came when Ethan's luck finally ran dry. He showed up to work late, again, reeking of alcohol. His boss didn't yell this time. He just sighed. "Ethan, you need help." Ethan laughed bitterly. "Help costs money. You gonna pay for it?" The silence that followed was the final nail in the coffin. By nightfall, Ethan was unemployed, broke, and too proud to call his father. He drove aimlessly through the rain, headlights slicing through the darkness, until the world blurred into a mess of memories. He thought of the laughter, the power he once had, the emptiness now swallowing him whole. And that's when it happened. The screech of tires, the flash of light, the sound of metal twisting into metal. The world went silent. In another part of the city, a dispatch radio crackled. Unit 47, we've got a major collision on Highway 9. Possible entrapment. Fire risk. EMTs needed immediately. Marcus grabbed his gear without hesitation. He didn't know who was inside that car. He didn't know that fate, the same fate that had once humiliated him in a crowded cafeteria, was calling him to the same man's rescue. When Ethan opened his eyes, everything felt like a dream. Or a punishment. A pale ceiling above him. The faint beep of a heart monitor. His right arm in a cast, ribs aching with every breath. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled the air. Hospital. He turned his head slowly. Through the fog of painkillers, he saw sunlight creeping through half-drawn blinds. He didn't remember much. Just fire, rain, and a shadow pulling him from the wreck. A man's voice saying, "You knew me once." But that couldn't be real, could it? The nurse entered quietly. "You're lucky," she said. "If that paramedic hadn't reached you when he did." She stopped, smiling softly. "He saved your life." Ethan's throat tightened. "What was his name?" She glanced at her clipboard. "Marcus Green, one of the best." The name hit him like an electric current. Marcus. The kid he mocked. The one he humiliated for laughs. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel like a victim of bad luck. He felt exposed, stripped bare of excuses. The universe had a cruel sense of irony. In the days that followed, something inside him began to shift. He stayed in that hospital bed longer than necessary, not because of pain, but because he was afraid. Afraid to face the man who'd saved him, scared to confront what he'd become. At night, he replayed his life like an old film reel. The cafeteria, the laughter, the look in Marcus's eyes. He wondered if Marcus remembered, or if Ethan was just one face among thousands of saved strangers. But the truth stung. He remembered, even if Marcus had chosen to forget. When he was discharged, Ethan limped out of the hospital with a new kind of silence in him. The kind that comes after a storm. He didn't go back to drinking. The thought of alcohol made him sick. Instead, he spent long hours just walking through streets he had never noticed before, past shelters, community clinics, and soup kitchens where people lined up with quiet desperation. For the first time, he saw the world not as something to conquer, but something to understand. At one small free clinic, he stopped to donate what little cash he had left. The receptionist smiled. "We can put it toward new medical kits," she said. "Our paramedics do a lot with very little." He nodded, voice hoarse. "That's good. They deserve more." He didn't mention the name echoing in his head. Marcus Green. He just hoped, somehow, to cross paths again. Not to be thanked, not to be forgiven. To say, "I remember." Elsewhere in the city, Marcus sat alone in his small apartment, watching the rain return. He'd saved countless people, but this one lingered. Not because it was Ethan, but because it reminded him that pain and redemption sometimes share the same face. He didn't tell anyone. He didn't need to. He whispered into the quiet, "Guess everyone gets a second chance." 2 weeks later, the rain returned, as if the sky was determined to replay that night. Marcus sat in his ambulance, sipping lukewarm coffee, as the radio buzzed with routine chatter. It was close to midnight, the kind of hour where the city's secrets whispered loudest. He rubbed his eyes, 3 shifts in a row, and exhaustion was setting in. Then the dispatcher's voice cut through. "Unit 47, multiple vehicle collision on Interstate 12. One trapped, vehicle overturned. Fire reported." Marcus froze. Interstate 12. The same stretch of road where he'd pulled a man from the flames not long ago. He didn't believe in coincidences, but he believed in patterns. "Copy that," he said, grabbing his gear. "Unit 47 en route." The rain grew heavier as the ambulance raced through the darkness, sirens piercing the storm. Marcus's partner, Luis, glanced at him. "You okay, man? You look like you've seen a ghost." Marcus forced a half-smile. "Maybe I have." They arrived at chaos, flashing lights, steam rising from shattered engines, the acrid scent of burning rubber. Firefighters fought the blaze while police waved them forward. Marcus moved quickly, ducking under the police tape. "Victims still conscious," a firefighter shouted. "Pinned by the steering column. The car's unstable." Marcus crawled through the broken glass and twisted metal. Inside the car, the man was slumped forward, blood streaking his forehead. Marcus reached for his pulse. Steady, strong, alive. "Sir," Marcus said, steady and calm, "I'm here to help. Can you hear me?" The man groaned, blinking through the haze. His voice came out cracked and weak. "Not again, not like this." Marcus froze. That voice. It couldn't be. He tilted his flashlight, and his breath caught. Ethan Carter. The same face. The same terrified eyes. Fate had circled back, not as irony this time, but as revelation. "Marcus." Ethan's voice trembled, broken by pain and disbelief. "It's you again?" Marcus hesitated. The rain hammered the metal roof like a drumbeat. For a moment, old ghosts stirred. The laughter, the cruelty, the humiliation. But then he saw what he'd always seen beneath it. A human being in need. "Yes," Marcus said softly. "It's me." He leaned closer, gripping Ethan's hand. "You're gonna be okay. Stay with me," Ethan coughed, wincing. "Why? Why do you keep saving me?" Marcus gave a small, weary smile. "Because that's what I do." He cut through the seatbelt, called for the jaws of life, and guided the extraction with precision. Every move was deliberate, professional, yet deeply personal. To the others, it was just another rescue. To Marcus, it was something sacred, the chance to prove that kindness could triumph over bitterness. Once Ethan was free, Marcus helped load him onto the stretcher. Their eyes met again, the same silent conversation continuing. Ethan whispered, "You should have let me burn." Marcus shook his head. "Nobody deserves that." As they drove back through the rain, Ethan's tears blended with the storm. He wasn't crying from pain, but from realization. This man, the one he once ridiculed for being less than, had now saved his life twice. When they reached the hospital, Ethan gripped Marcus's wrist weakly. "Why didn't you tell me before?" Marcus looked down at him, quiet for a moment. "I didn't need to," he said. "You needed to see it for yourself." Ethan nodded slowly, his chest rising and falling. "I do. I see it now." Marcus gave a faint smile and turned to leave, rainwater dripping from his jacket. As the automatic doors closed behind him, Ethan whispered the first honest prayer of his life. "God, please make me like him." Ethan Carter woke to the same sound that had haunted him before, the steady beeping of a monitor reminding him he was still alive. But this time, it didn't feel like a miracle. It felt like a burden, a debt he didn't know how to repay. His body was bruised, ribs wrapped in gauze, arm in a sling. But his mind was heavier than ever. Every time he blinked, he saw Marcus, that calm, unwavering gaze cutting through smoke and fear. The same man he once made a joke out of in a crowded cafeteria. Now that same man had saved his life twice. Ethan tried to find Marcus, but the paramedics came and went like ghosts. He asked a nurse, who smiled and said, "He's out on another call. That's what he does. Never stops, never stops." The words echoed. Ethan spent hours staring out the hospital window, watching the city below. He saw the world moving on, buses, laughter, lights, while he sat in stillness, realizing how empty his own life had been. Money, parties, pride. They were all ashes now. And somewhere out there, a man he once mocked was risking his life for strangers. Again and again, without expecting thanks. For the first time, Ethan felt something he didn't recognize. Not shame, not fear. When he was finally discharged, he didn't go home. He couldn't. The thought of returning to that cold, messy apartment made his chest tighten. Instead, he limped down to the local library, a place he hadn't entered since high school, and looked up the city's emergency medical unit roster. It didn't take long to find him. Commendations for bravery, Volunteer of the Year, Mentor for Youth Rescue Program. Ethan stared at the screen until his eyes began to blur. The words didn't just describe a man, they described a life built on purpose, everything Ethan had thrown away. The next evening, Ethan found himself standing outside the community health center where Marcus volunteered. The sign above the door read, he hesitated at the entrance, unsure if he belonged there. Through the glass, he saw Marcus in uniform, kneeling beside a young boy with a scraped knee, speaking gently, bandaging the wound with practiced care. That same patience, that same steadiness. Ethan realized it wasn't just a job for Marcus. It was who he was. He took a deep breath and stepped inside. Marcus noticed him immediately, but didn't flinch. He finished with the boy, patted his shoulder, and only then stood to face Ethan. Their eyes met. Silence thick as gravity. "Didn't think I'd see you again," Marcus said finally, voice calm but unreadable. Ethan swallowed hard. "I wasn't sure I should come." Marcus tilted his head slightly. "But you did?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah, because I needed to." He hesitated, searching for the right words. "You saved me. Twice. I don't even know why." Marcus's gaze softened, though his tone stayed firm. "Because I could." He wiped his hands with a cloth, then added quietly, "And maybe because I knew one day you'd ask that question." Ethan's voice cracked. "I was horrible to you." "I was a kid," Marcus interrupted. "A lost one. We both were." He paused. "I forgave you a long time ago, Ethan. You just never knew." For a long moment, Ethan couldn't speak. The weight of those words settled in his chest, like sunlight after storm clouds. He looked around. The chipped paint, the outdated supplies, the volunteers working with tired smiles. "You do all this with so little?" Marcus shrugged. "You learn to work with what you've got." Ethan nodded slowly, his mind already racing. "Then maybe I can help," Marcus frowned. "Help how?" "I don't have much left," Ethan admitted. "But I've got time. I can raise money. I know people who owe me favors. I want to do something that matters." He paused, eyes earnest. "Something you'd be proud of." Marcus studied him for a moment. The face of a man once cruel, now broken and rebuilding. Then, slowly, he nodded. "All right, Ethan. Let's see if you mean it." Weeks turned into months. Ethan showed up every day, sweeping floors, repairing equipment, and organizing supplies. At first, volunteers whispered. They remembered who he'd been. But Marcus never treated him like a stranger, never like an enemy. Just another pair of hands trying to lend a helping hand. One evening, as they cleaned up after closing, Ethan asked quietly, "Have you ever thought about that day?" "The cafeteria?" Marcus smiled faintly. "Now and then. Not because of what you did, but because it pushed me to become who I am." He looked over. "So maybe I should thank you." Ethan's eyes filled, his voice breaking. "No, don't thank me. I don't deserve that." Marcus placed a hand on his shoulder. "Maybe not then, but maybe now." By spring, the clinic had begun to change, not just in spirit, but in walls and colors. The once cracked tiles gleamed white. The waiting benches were replaced with second-hand chairs Ethan had refurbished himself. There were posters now. "Kindness heals faster than medicine." Ethan hung that one himself. He still wasn't sure if he believed it, but Marcus did, and that was enough. Ethan found meaning in the small things. filling out forms, fixing broken cabinets, ordering supplies online. Tasks no one noticed, but that made the clinic run smoother. Every day, he worked beside Marcus, watching as he effortlessly turned chaos into calm. The way kids smiled when he entered a room, the way tired mothers relaxed when he spoke to them. Marcus didn't just save lives, he restored them. One afternoon, as they loaded medical kits into the ambulance, Marcus said quietly, "You've changed." Ethan looked up, startled. "You really think so?" Marcus nodded. "You don't talk like someone who hates the world anymore." Ethan gave a small smile. "Maybe because the world finally showed me mercy." Marcus chuckled softly. "Nah, the world didn't change. You did." For the first time, Ethan believed that might be true. The following weekend, Marcus invited Ethan to his old neighborhood. They drove through narrow streets where children played barefoot, and music drifted from cracked windows. "Used to live right there," Marcus said, pointing to a faded blue duplex. "Didn't have much, but Mom made it feel like we did." Ethan watched the kids run past, laughing, their joy untainted by poverty. He thought of his own childhood. Big house, big lies, small heart. "Marcus," he said quietly, "you ever think about why you had to go through all that? The teasing, the struggle?" Marcus smiled. "All the time. But I stopped seeing it as punishment. It was training." "Training for what?" "For moments like that night," he said softly, eyes fixed ahead. "When someone needs saving, and you don't have time to hate them." Ethan swallowed hard. "You mean me?" Marcus nodded once. "Yeah, you." Later that evening, as they unloaded supplies back at the clinic, Ethan paused by the ambulance. The city lights glimmered on the wet pavement. "Marcus," he said, voice low, "that night, when you saved me the second time, why didn't you walk away?" "You could have. God knows I deserved it." Marcus looked at him for a long time before answering. "Because if I'd left you there, I'd be no better than the people who laughed at me." He sighed. "Hatred's heavy, Ethan. It kills you from the inside long before it kills anyone else." Then, softer, "I wasn't saving you for you. I was saving myself." Ethan felt his chest tighten as emotion rose like a tide. He turned away, blinking back tears. Marcus's words hit harder than any punishment could have. He realized, in that instant, that forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about freeing yourself from the weight of what others did. And Marcus had been free for a long time. Ethan was only learning how. That night, Ethan wrote a letter, not to Marcus, but to the version of himself he used to be. He wrote about the cafeteria, the cruelty, the emptiness that followed. He didn't sign it. He burned it. The ashes floated out the window, carried off by the wind. The last remnants of a boy who thought power came from laughter at someone else's pain. He looked up at the night sky and whispered, "You didn't just save my life, Marcus. You taught me how to live it." The first hint of trouble came as a faint plume of smoke on the horizon. Marcus was restocking supplies in the clinic when a call came through his radio, frantic, fragmented. "Fire at West Point Community Center. Multiple civilians trapped. Request immediate assistance." Marcus's face turned pale. The community center was 2 blocks away, the same one where they hosted youth medical workshops every Saturday. Without hesitation, he grabbed his jacket. "Ethan, let's go!" Ethan looked up from the supply counter, startled. "What's going on?" "Fire," Marcus said sharply. "And it's bad." Ethan's heart pounded. He didn't think. He just followed. When they arrived, the air was thick with smoke, and the sound of sirens filled the air. Flames clawed through the upper floors, painting the sky orange. People screamed outside, faces covered in soot and tears. "There are kids inside!" someone shouted. Marcus didn't wait for backup. He grabbed an oxygen mask, secured his gear, and sprinted toward the entrance. Ethan grabbed his arm. "You can't go in there alone." Marcus looked at him, eyes blazing. "If I don't, they die." Ethan hesitated only a second before pulling his shirt over his mouth and following him in. Inside was chaos. The heat was suffocating, smoke turning everything into a swirling nightmare of shadow and flame. Marcus moved like a man possessed, checking rooms, calling out, guiding children toward the exit. Ethan stayed close, his eyes burning, lungs screaming for air. They found a group of kids huddled in a corner, coughing. Marcus knelt. "It's okay. It's okay. We're gonna get you out." Ethan helped lift the smallest one, a boy barely 6 years old, into his arms. "Go! I've got him!" he yelled. Marcus nodded, leading the rest out. Ethan stumbled through the smoke, tripping over debris, but he kept moving until daylight hit his face. He handed the boy to a paramedic outside, coughing violently. Then he realized Marcus wasn't behind him. Panic surged through Ethan's chest. He spun around, eyes wild. "Marcus!" he shouted, but his voice vanished into the roar of fire. A firefighter tried to stop him. "You can't go back in there. The ceiling's about to collapse." But Ethan was already running back into the inferno. Inside, the world was burning. Walls cracked and groaned, glass shattered overhead. He called again, "Marcus!" No answer. He moved deeper, covering his mouth, eyes streaming. The heat seared his skin. Then, faintly, he heard it. A cough, a voice. "In here!" Ethan forced open a half-collapsed door. Inside, Marcus was pinned under a fallen beam, his leg trapped. A young girl sat beside him, trembling. "Go!" Marcus rasped. "Get her out first." Ethan dropped beside him. "Not without you." He lifted the beam with everything he had. Muscles screaming, lungs burning. It didn't move. "Ethan, listen!" Marcus coughed, grabbing his wrist. "You can't save both of us if you stay." Ethan's eyes burned, from smoke, from grief, from guilt. "Don't tell me that," he said through clenched teeth. "You saved me twice. I'm not leaving you behind." Ethan wrapped his arms around the beam, adrenaline surging through him. He screamed as he heaved with everything in him. The wood shifted, just enough. Marcus gasped as Ethan dragged him free, then scooped up the terrified girl. The hallway behind them exploded in flame. They ran. Ceiling tiles fell. A door burst open from pressure, knocking Ethan sideways. He shielded the girl with his body. Marcus pulled them both up, limping, shouting, "Almost there! Just go!" They burst through the exit as the upper floor collapsed behind them, a wave of heat chasing them into the night. The moment they hit the ground, the firefighters swarmed them, pulling the girl away, spraying their suits with water. Ethan tore off his burned jacket, gasping and coughing up black soot. Marcus was on his knees, face streaked with ash, eyes glistening with exhaustion and relief. Ethan looked at him, chest heaving. "You okay?" Marcus laughed weakly, blood on his lips. Define okay, they both started laughing, hysterical, breathless, until the laughter turned into tears. Around them, medics carried out more survivors. The little girl they'd saved ran back to Marcus and hugged him tight. "Thank you, mister," she whispered. Marcus smiled faintly. "No need to thank me, sweetheart. He's the real hero tonight." He nodded toward Ethan. Ethan shook his head. "No, you are. You always were." Moments later, Marcus's body swayed. Ethan caught him before he hit the ground. "Marcus, hey, stay with me." Paramedics rushed over. "He's losing blood pressure." Ethan backed away as they worked. Compressions, oxygen, IV lines, everything blurred. The noise, the shouting, the lights. He could only hear Marcus's faint voice from before. "If I'd left you there, I'd be no better than them." Ethan fell to his knees, trembling, whispering, "Please, don't let this be how it ends." Hours later, the fire was out. The community center was gone, but every child had survived. Ethan sat on the curb, bandaged and shaking, staring at the horizon as dawn broke. A nurse approached. "Is alive," she said softly. "Critical, but stable." Ethan exhaled shakily, tears falling freely now. He looked at the sunrise, red and gold again, like the sky itself was offering forgiveness. He whispered, "You saved me again, Marcus. Not from fire this time, from myself." The fire had changed everything. Not just the clinic, not just the neighborhood, but Ethan Carter. And maybe, for the first time in his life, that change felt permanent. The community center was gone, reduced to rubble and memory. But Marcus's willpower, even from a hospital bed, rebuilt it. Ethan visited every day, sitting beside him as he went through the slow process of healing. Marcus's leg was bandaged, his ribs fractured, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. "You should rest," Ethan would say. Marcus grinned faintly. "You ever known me to rest?" Ethan chuckled. "Guess not." In those hospital halls, their bond deepened, no longer a rescuer and the rescued, but brothers forged by pain and redemption. When Marcus was finally discharged, the clinic threw a small celebration. Children brought handmade cards, mothers brought food, and at the center of it all stood Ethan, holding a folder of blueprints. "What's this?" Marcus asked. Ethan smiled. "The new community center. And the clinic expansion. We'll name it after your mom, the Grace Green Health Center." Marcus blinked, speechless. Ethan continued softly. "She raised the man who saved me. More than once. This is the least I can do." For a long moment, Marcus said nothing. Then he pulled Ethan into a hug, the kind that says more than words ever could. "Thank you," he whispered. "Not for this, for who you've become." Months passed. The new center rose from the ashes, brighter, busier, alive with purpose. Marcus returned to work, moving more slowly with greater strength. Ethan managed logistics, fundraisers, and volunteers, utilizing his sales skills from his past in a meaningful way this time. He gave motivational talks at local schools, standing before rows of wide-eyed teens. He didn't hide from his past. He told the truth. "I used to be the kind of person who thought being cruel made me powerful," he would say, voice steady. "But I learned the hard way that real strength is the courage to care. You can't undo your mistakes, but you can outlive them by doing better." The first time he said it, Marcus stood in the back of the room, watching. Afterward, he clapped the loudest. One afternoon, while cleaning up after a youth workshop, Ethan noticed a shy kid sitting alone. Dark-skinned, nervous, holding an inhaler. He smiled, walking over. "Hey, you okay?" The boy nodded but avoided eye contact. They make fun of how I talk." Ethan's heart clenched. He knelt so they were at eye level. "Let me tell you something, kid. The world can be mean, but what they say doesn't define you. What you do does. One day, you'll show them kindness they don't deserve, and that'll be your victory." The boy smiled weakly. "You really think so?" Ethan nodded. "I don't think. I know. Trust me. I learned it the hard way." As he walked away, Marcus appeared in the doorway, watching the exchange. "You sound a lot like me," Marcus said with a grin. Ethan laughed. "Maybe I've been hanging around the right people." That night, as the clinic lights dimmed and the streets fell quiet, Ethan stood outside under the same stars he once cursed. He thought about how life had come full circle, how a cruel boy had been humbled by the very man he once humiliated. He thought about Marcus's words. "Hatred's heavy, Ethan. It kills you from the inside." And he finally understood what they meant. Because forgiveness wasn't just Marcus freeing him. It was Marcus freeing himself. And now, Ethan was learning to do the same. He closed his eyes, whispering to the night, "Redemption doesn't erase your past. It just writes a better ending." As the weeks turned into months, the story of their friendship spread. Two men from opposite sides of life, bound by one act of mercy that rippled into a lifetime of change. Schools invited them to speak. News crews came and went. But neither cared for fame. Their victory wasn't headlines. It was the quiet gratitude in the faces of the people they helped. One evening, while locking up, Marcus looked at Ethan and smiled. "You ever think about how strange it is?" Ethan raised a brow. "How what's strange?" "That maybe God let you mock me back then, so you'd remember who to become later." Ethan chuckled softly. "So you're saying I was part of your divine plan?" Marcus laughed. "More like the detour that taught me patience." They both laughed. Easy. Genuine laughter that years ago would have been impossible. As they walked out, Ethan glanced back at the clinic sign glowing softly in the dusk. He thought about how that glow, gentle, persistent, was what Marcus had always been in his life. A light that refused to die, no matter how dark it got. Marcus now stands side by side. The projector hums softly. On the wall behind them, the words, "Empathy in action." The children listen, eyes wide. Marcus speaks first. Calm, measured, his voice carrying a quiet authority that only truth can give. "Sometimes," he says, "the world gives you pain, not to break you, but to build your purpose." He pauses, glancing at Ethan beside him. "I used to think the worst thing in life was being laughed at. But the truth? The worst thing is letting that laughter decide who you'll be. Don't let bitterness become your story." Ethan steps forward, his voice softer, trembling with emotion. "And sometimes," he says, "you'll be the one who laughs, the one who causes pain. Maybe because you don't understand someone's struggle, or maybe because you're running from your own." He looks at the students, his eyes steady. "Kane todi tiorkabao tidurst." I was that person. I mocked someone stronger than I could ever be. And years later, he saved my life. A hush fills the room. He continues, "If you've ever hurt someone, it's not too late to change. You can't erase what you did, but you can choose what you'll do next." Redemption isn't about being perfect. It's about being different than who you were yesterday. Marcus nods gently. "And forgiveness?" He smiles faintly. "That's not weakness. It's power. The kind that sets both souls free." Their story became more than a tale of guilt and grace. It became a message, whispered in classrooms, preached in churches, printed in local papers. But to them, it was never about fame. It was about proving that change is possible, even for those who least deserve it. Ethan once said he used to live for applause. Now, he lived for silence, the kind that comes from a heart finally at peace. He still had bad days, days when the old guilt crept back, whispering that he didn't deserve Marcus's friendship. But on those days, he'd find Marcus in the clinic hallway, smiling that same calm smile, and he'd remember. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past. It teaches you how to walk forward with it. Ethan looks up at the sky, the same sky that once watched him burn and be reborn beneath it. "Funny," he says softly, "how life circles back, huh?" Marcus grins. "Not a circle, brother. A climb. You just finally started going up." They laugh, a sound pure and unburdened. As they walk down the quiet street, the camera lingers on the clinic sign glowing behind them. The words shimmer in the night air. Grace Green Health Center. Every life matters. The narrator's voice returns one last time. Gentle, reflective, resonant. He mocked a poor black kid, and years later, that kid saved his life. But maybe the real miracle wasn't survival. It was transformation. Because sometimes, the people we hurt the most become the very ones who show us what humanity truly means. Sometimes respect takes flight in unexpected ways, carried not by pride, but by grace, inspired by countless unseen acts of forgiveness. If this story moved you, share it. Someone out there might need to be reminded. It's never too late to change.